Thank you for attending the Student Organization Summit, and we hope you enjoy the following session. If you're viewing this workshop after the live premiere, make sure to visit our YouTube channel or official website to see an archive of all past discussions and workshops. And now, on to your presentation.
Hello, my name is Virginia Luehrsen. I'm a coordinator of student activities. Today, we're going to be talking about self-paced workshops for co-curricular learning. These are a new workshop series that we've started here at the University of Texas at Austin in our student activities office. They're brought to you by our development and recognition team, which I'm the supervisor. But we have 4 awesome students. We have 3 undergrads, Kennedy, Nikita, and Apurva. And then we have a graduate assistant, Adriana. And then we have a full-time staff member, Zach, and as well as myself, that work on this team. So we're very excited to share with you what we've been working on. So as we get started today, I'd really like to acknowledge that I am in Austin, Texas, and the university here is settled on the indigenous lands of Turtle Island, the ancestral name for what is now called North America. I would like to acknowledge the Alabama Coshada, Caddo, Carrizo, Comanche, Kickapoo, Lipan Apache, Tonkawa, Isleta del Sur Pueblo, and all of this North American Indian and indigenous peoples, and the communities who have been here or have become a part of the lands and territories in Texas. I do like to recognize the elders, past, present, and emerging from all of these communities. All right, so let's get started. First, I want to give a little bit of an overview of what we do here on our DART team. It's kind of redundant, but our development and recognition team. So we have 2 main areas that our team focuses on. The first is our organization development workshops. We've been doing that for a very long time. And then we have our awards and recognition programs. So the workshops historically, especially in the before times, were mostly in person. We had very few options for any sort of online content. The limited online content we had was more just clicking through things and, checking a box. And our awards program, which I don't know if we have any presentations this year on it, but we have a very robust program called the Pillars of the 40 Acres and our Swing Out Awards. So you can always check out our website and learn more what we're doing. We're happy to chat with our colleagues about what you're doing and exchange ideas there as well. But today, we're going to talk about workshops. So even in the before times, when we were still in person with majority of our workshops, we noticed that there were some issues, of course, that come up. The first is, how do we reach all of the organizations? So the scalability question was the first thing. We didn't have a very high turnout except for some of our required workshops like safety ed, which all orgs have to attend. But all these optional ones, we had a difficult time reaching everybody. And that wasn't because they didn't want to come. It was because we had to base our schedule on our presenters' time frame. And that didn't always line up with the leadership for these student organizations and what their schedules look like. So we want to make sure we're meeting them where they are and trying to get more of them in the door. The next thing was sustainability. So how do we build a sustainable program? It's very easy to spiral out of control and create 500 different workshops because you're trying to meet everyone where they are in terms of skill and knowledge. So, for example, we'll talk about the financial workshop. We have some students who come in that have a very good understanding and grasp of finances, and they got this, and all they want is a template from us and maybe a quick overview of the budget. And we have other students who come in like, I'm the financial director because I wanted a challenge and I've never touched money before. So they all come to us in a different way. We can't create new workshops for all of them. And sometimes offering them in person is kind of, boring for those who are very well versed and maybe too fast for those who have a long ways to go in their learning process. So we want something sustainable without having to create dozens and dozens of workshops. The next thing is equity. So what do we mean when we talk about equity? There's a couple things that we want to bring up that we've noticed over time, and I'm sure some of you have as well. The first is, does everyone have equal access to our programs in terms of time that they're offered? Kind of talked about that with the scalability a little bit. Our students have different times, different time frames. How do we provide equitable access when we have a gigantic campus and not everyone can get into all of the classrooms that we have? We are a campus that's been around for well over 150 years. I don't think any of our buildings are quite that old, except for maybe the Littlefield Mansion. But we do have buildings that predate ADA regulations. And so there may not be spaces for some students to join us in person. So there's that equity access there as well. There's also just a question of, do students feel comfortable in these spaces asking questions? Do they feel like they're going to be heard? If they're just rushed into a workshop for 45 minutes and then rush back out the door, that might not be a space where they feel like they've made enough connection. So our students may not feel like they've made enough connection in those 45 minutes to feel like that is a space where they want to speak out and ask their questions and be vulnerable. Finally, we're going to talk about timeliness. So timeliness is another component of the workshop challenges that we've noticed. And this is not just about the time that we offer, it's about the timeliness of the content. So if we're offering officer transition workshops, maybe 3 times a semester, we might catch a few students who are in the process of thinking of officer transition at that time. But let's be honest, a lot of our students are thinking about things like officer transition, orientation, how to use certain technology, how to access our awards program. They're thinking about that in the evenings, the weekends, their vacations, times when we're not doing presentations. So that timeliness component is really important so they actually find it useful at the moment that they need it. All right, so what we've done to address some of that is we want to create some sort of online environment that introduces ways to address scalability, sustainability, equity, and timeliness. But as we do that, we do recognize as we move into something like an online workshop, as you'll find on our website, we do have a couple of our old ones that are still there if you want to click around. They introduced a host of problems as well. So the first thing that we want to address is engagement. We do know that with online workshops that you don't get that face-to-face. And we do know that that can cause things to slip through the cracks, that sometimes students will just click, 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 and they get a checkbox like, yeah, I did this, but they wouldn't be able to articulate any of the content. They also lose on the meaningful contacts with other students to grow their organization, learn from each other. So we want to make sure that we have an online environment that addresses the question of engagement. The next thing is the learning component. So I'm not saying that students don't learn in an online environment. I think this pandemic has taught us that they can. There are struggles, but they can learn. What I'm talking about is more of those tacit knowledge moments, the things that happen when we have a discussion breakout in a room and suddenly all these ideas start flowing. So any of us who have taught in the classroom know what that feels like and how different that's been with this pandemic. So we want to be mindful of that as well when we move to an online environment. The third thing that we want to consider is incentive. So when I'm talking about incentive, it's more of what's our incentive for them to participate. Again, it's very easy for them just to click through all of the slides or click through some text or a PDF and be like, scan it and like, yeah, okay, I got it. But there's nothing tied to it. There's no ownership to them learning that material or engaging with each other. So we want to provide an incentive in that online environment. In an in-person environment, there might be peer pressure. There might be a Socratic method where I'm going to randomly call on people. But there's some sort of incentive where they have to follow along and pay attention. And then lastly, I want to talk about visibility. So what happens is we have our workshops advertised, and when students are looking for them, they can find them, but they don't necessarily pop up where if they're not looking for them. So it's like serendipitous discovery is not happening. There's also the problem with online environment. Out of sight is out of mind. Any of us who've tried to take an online class and failed, hello, myself, I am guilty of this. Coursera has probably taken more money than they need to. You need to bleep that out. That's okay. Not brand dropping here. But the visibility, out of sight, out of mind, is a real thing for a lot of our students and a lot of individuals probably watching this. So how do we ensure that this course stays on their radar and so they can access it when they need it? So those are the 4 things we realized, that there probably is more, but 4 things that we try to address when we introduce these as online workshops. So what do we do for that? So it starts with a discussion of pedagogy. I'm not going to give you a breakdown. I'm not going to give you a literature review on pedagogy, I promise. This is more just letting you know where this is coming from. So prior to working in student activities and student affairs in general, I taught in the classrooms here at UT Austin for credit courses. And I did a lot of training. I got my advanced teaching certificate, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the trainings that I went through was something called discovery learning. This is a very similar model to any of you who might have learned something like learning by doing. But it is about starting from our natural point of inquisitiveness, I guess is the word, but inquiry, using inquiry as the first step towards learning. So if we approach our online workshops in that same space in our co-curricular environment, my theory here is that it will actually prompt our students to engage, to learn, and to stay up to date with the content and use it when they need it. So again, that is the discovery learning model, if anyone wants to look into that. But that's what we've based our online workshops that we have created for this year, is based on a discovery learning model. So we want to incentivize them to ask questions, to explore new things, and like it says, discover what they know, what they don't know, and what they might not have realized that they wanted to know. Okay, so how do we do that? We have 2 workshops that we have developed so far. We have a 3rd one in the works, possibly a 4th, but we're at the very, very, very beginning stages of the planning for that one. So the 2 that are launched and ready to go, we already have students. Some students are signing up for them. We have officer orientation and financial education. So really quick, I just want to provide you all just a quick view of what we're using. So we're using Canvas. I know some of you might be Blackboard, some of you might have either, or you might have a homegrown system. We're in Canvas. So if you have Canvas, you'll recognize perhaps some of this. This is the student view. And obviously when they log into financial education, they self-log in. They don't have to have permission from us. They can log in Christmas Eve at 11 p.m. Parents are going crazy. They want to take a break from everyone. They want to log in and do financial education. I don't understand students sometimes, even though I used to be one. So they can log in and start whenever they want. They can also unenroll whenever they want, but we haven't had them do that yet. So this is what they'll see when they log in. We provide a welcome screen, and we try to list all of the modules out front right here. So they might just click around. So financial education, as I mentioned earlier, is a great example of where sometimes a student will feel very confident that they already understand everything they need. They just wanted a budget worksheet from us and maybe a chance to submit their budget and get some formal feedback from our financial wellness center. So what we have done is broken it up in a way that they can just jump to planning a budget if they want, or even next steps. We do encourage them to go in order. We number it 1 through 6, but they are welcome to go in the order that they feel is best for them. They can also break out into the quizzes, discussions, and assignments. I just realized files is there. We normally don't share the files. That was a mistake. So I will shut that before I launch, or before this goes live for you all. I will close off files. But sometimes students just want to jump to the quizzes and discussions. The other reason we have that there is maybe they've already done this workshop. They've completed all the steps, all 6 modules, and it's 3 months later, and they're like, I remember I did something with this, but what was it? Or I remember someone on the discussion board mentioned that they went to this other bank and they found it much easier to do whatever they needed to do. They can just click on the discussion. They don't have to go searching through the entire course to find what they're looking for. So we've tried to make it a way that it's approachable. This is not the default look for Canvas. We've had to create this ourselves. And we are also, this is the very beginning stages of our creation. It is a living document, By that, I mean, we're constantly updating it. Some of that updating is content, and sometimes it is just how beautiful can we make it? How accessible can we make it in terms of, yeah, this is like a space that I want to engage. So we work on that. We put some graphics in. We've got, in another workshop that I'll show you in a minute, we've got PDFs and things like that they can download. And so it's a living document. We also grow it as we get feedback from the students. So how do we get feedback? So we foster engagement through discussion boards, quizzes, assignments, whatnot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a screenshot from our officer transition workshop. It's the second one that we've built, and also walk you through how we're using all the different functions in Canvas to address these 4 areas that are critical to address when offering online workshops. Okay, so we're going to get into officer transition. The screen looks a little different. You are seeing the teacher screen. This is the screen that I see. I did bring this up intentionally. I wanted to show you slightly the difference between what the student screen and what my screen looks like. You'll see the little eye with the line drawn through. That means students can't see it, but I can. So we've created rubrics. We might have, again, files, things, people who is enrolled. Obviously, I don't want other students to see other students' names, so that's blocked from them, but I can pull it up if I need to. You'll see a to-do. So I've got a post survey that was just submitted that I need to be grading, or one of my team grades. I probably will not do it myself. We also provide an expected time to complete. And again, we have the list of the modules. We did number these. I'm just noticing that now. So back to the drawing board. Again, living document. So let's go through those 4 critical areas and how we're addressing them in this setup that we're using with Canvas. All right, the first was engagement. So with engagement, we have discussion boards, assignments. Discussion boards, we're looking at that engagement between members. So we're asking them to share a post and then reply to 2 other people. We want them to have some sort of conversation going, build some momentum around a topic. We also dream, hopefully, that over time, students will come back to this course and re-engage with it. We haven't gotten to that point yet. That would be a cool thing to measure in the future. That is something that we are designing some assessment plans for, though. And then assignments. Assignments, there is the engagement with our office. So what we've done is we've set up a system where they can submit little assignments throughout the courses, and each module has some sort of submission, either a discussion board or an assignment or a quiz. There's one that has a little quiz in it. And that allows them to have a point of contact with us, and then our team within 72 hours or 3 business days, I guess I should probably say 3 business days, we respond to their submission and we provide feedback. So it starts with my student employees. It starts there. They are assigned what we call collaterals in our office, where they have weekly assignments that they do. So they're assigned to these discussion boards or to these assignments to provide feedback. If they feel like it's the question they can't answer, or they get a really complex budget that came in, they're like, whoa, I don't know what to do, they can reach out to myself. They can reach out to our graduate assistant. We have our financial wellness center, and we've also started lining up a whole host of other subject matter experts on campus that we can refer these assignments to so they can get genuine feedback on a timely basis. So that also leads us to learning. We learn from mistakes. And so I don't want to call it mistakes, because our students might submit something that needs to be fixed a little bit. And that's where that learning happens. So what we want to do is we want to measure it. So we have pre-surveys. So before they start any part of the module, they'll be prompted to start a pre-survey. It has 5 quick questions that we just want to gauge where they are. Like I said, officer transition does have 1 quiz. It's optional, but they can take it. Just to kind of benchmark what they're learning. And then we have post surveys. The post surveys are pretty much a mirror of the pre-survey asked in a past tense context. So I learned this rather than I would like to learn. So that helps us address some of the learning issues that are hard to track in an online environment. Again, it's really easy just to click through, and we don't know. We could track the amount of time they spent on a page in Canvas. Like I can go in the metrics and see, oh, the student spent 20 minutes on this page. That doesn't mean they spent 20 minutes on that page. That meant that they clicked on the page and then mom or dad called and they took the phone for 19 minutes. So How do we know? We at least can do some sort of assessment measure here. All right, so incentive. How do I incentivize students to take this, to work with it, to continue using this resource? That's where the living document part comes in. Is students start to realize this is a document that we're not taking things away, we're not changing it, but we're growing it. It becomes more useful over time. And it's not just my team that is, but their peers around campus who are adding to the discussion boards, who are submitting assignments that they might want to be sharing with everybody. They might submit an assignment and say, and we'll write back and say, this is a beautiful budget sheet that you've made. Can we borrow it? We'll blank out the numbers. Can we borrow it and post it as an example? And so we want our students to know that this is a space that will continue to grow with them because of them. And that hopefully will bring them in. Also being a responsive team by providing timely feedback on all of their submissions, by scrolling through the discussion board, giving them thumbs up, commenting back on the discussion board, saying, that's a really great insight. Thank you for sharing that. And then taking that, not just saying thank you, that's a great insight, but maybe down the line that becomes a new page or a new module. That is what I mean by being a responsive team and having a living document. Through that, we hope students realize the value of what we're offering. And finally, visibility. Again, I am guilty of this. I take an online class, I forget that I'm enrolled in it, or I know I'm enrolled and it just continues to slip my mind because out of sight, out of mind. So the nice thing with Canvas on our campus, it is used for all of our classes. Every single course on our campus that has credit hours attached to it is automatically set up a Canvas class. So the students just log into one dashboard, and this workshop will be in the same space as all of their credit courses. So that hopefully means that as they're scrolling through, they can maybe have little reminders, right? Like little pokes like, hey, I forgot that I signed up for this, but that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And sometimes it takes a few reminders for them to really click on it, but that's okay. It's always present for them if they want it to be. Okay, so that was kind of in a nutshell how we're using these online workshops. We want to get up right in front and talk about what those challenges are that using online workshops creates and how we're addressing those. But now let's go back to that initial little diagram that I made for you all that talks about sustainability, scalability, equity, and timeliness. And the success of getting to the mountaintop, I guess, is what I was going for there. So let's talk about scalability. How do these online workshops help with scalability? Essentially, we hope that we can reach more orgs. Right now, with workshops that are in person only, we're seeing less than a 1% engagement for some of our workshops, especially financial education. We can't offer it more than a few times a semester. We just don't have the subject matter expert time to offer it all the time. But we're hoping just for this first year, we would like to aim for 10% of our orgs engaging with our financial workshops and our officer transition workshops. We have a long ways to go, but that's okay. We have a goal in mind, and we're coming up with a plan for how we're going to reach that goal. But that's that scalability I was talking about. Let's talk about sustainability, collaboration. By having this online environment, it's a collaborative atmosphere. It's a collaboration between our team and campus partners or subject matter experts. It's also a collaboration between our team and our students. So we want them to know that they can give us ideas just as we're sharing our ideas with them. Our goal in terms of how do we make this sustainable for my very small team to manage. By the way, we have a little over 1,000 orgs in a normal semester, so that's a large amount. How do I get my team to do this? And again, it's assigning everybody on the team a few hours a week to engage with the content. If no one has submitted an assignment that week, that might be when they're going to go through and make some updates to the content or add in a graphic. But we're always going to have time that we're devoting to this workshop, these 2 workshops, to keep them moving. Equity. This is a big one. We want to provide access to content. The content, we could create the best workshop in the world. It could be award-winning if such an award existed. But if no one can make it, it doesn't matter. So we want to make sure we're providing access. Access can be restricted by schedules of the student, schedules of the subject matter expert, schedules of my team and myself. We want to provide access to content through encouraging peer learning. Again, we want to make sure that students feel like it's a space where they can maybe read other people's comments, get their thoughts, and like, I didn't realize other people thought that too, and then add to that conversation. Sometimes we get that in person, but again, in a 45-minute in-person workshop, you might not get that. So we're hoping to prompt a little bit more of that in the online space. And finally, when we're talking about access, of course, we are talking about ADA compliance. Canvas is fully ADA compliant. There are overrides to it, but we don't use any of those on our team. We've made an agreement we're not going to do that. Every time we have a PDF that's downloadable, it's also transcribed into Canvas as a page as well, so it's fully accessible. And then also the issue is we're an old campus. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of spaces on campus that are not necessarily accessible for some of our students, staff, or faculty. So by providing it on Canvas, at the very least, we hope that every one of our students can access the Canvas courses because of its ADA compliance, because we have the technology services on our campus. We are in an urban area, so everyone has Wi-Fi. If not at home, they can at least come to campus and use the Wi-Fi here, or hopefully access it somewhere nearby. So that's what we mean by that equity piece. There's a lot more to equity, of course, in that space, but that's really what we're addressing right now with these online workshops. Okay, then we're going to talk about timeliness. This is huge. This is that when do students need this content? They really don't need officer transition content on a Thursday at 2 p.m. right before they go to their physics exam. That's not the time. That might be the time that fits their schedule, but that's not when they need that information. They will probably need that information over spring break as they're planning for what they're going to be doing with elections when they come back with their org. So we want to provide that 365, 24/7 resource for our students. The other thing, part timeliness, of course, is that timely feedback again from our team. By having a schedule where everyone is assigned every week a certain amount of hours that they're devoted just to these online workshops, we can reach a lot of orgs, but still provide that timely feedback so students don't feel like left out in the cold, like no one's even bothering to read their stuff. So that's kind of how we've addressed it. Again, we've got the 4 areas that we know that workshops, the challenges of workshops: scalability, sustainability, equity, and timeliness. We're not solving all the world's problems by going online. We have plenty of workshops. We're never going to move to online because we love to offer them in person. But we've strategically selected some of our workshop topics because of one of these 4 things, if not all of these 4 things, have presented problems for our orgs to access them. So scalability is huge, especially when it comes to financial resources. We're talking about financial experts whose time is very valuable that we can't always get when the students need them. So that is why we have decided to make that an online only workshop. So finally, as we're talking about this, I also want to just talk about workshops in general, just a little caveat. As we're talking about workshops, we have to remember the word work. And I know some of us think about this, some of us don't, some of us may be used to, but we've learned not to anymore. When we think of workshop, we do want it to have some component of work, collaboration, engagement. So that was an integral part of building this as an online environment. It can't be a workshop if there's no engagement, if there's no work being submitted, if there's no processes happening other than just reading content or watching a video. We want them to get feedback. We want them to have feedback if it's in person or online. Workshops are great for co-curricular engagement as long as students can make it. But let's face it, they are time and space bound. And it can be a logistical nightmare to set up a workshop. 1, let alone 30 for an entire semester. Believe me, I know, this is what I do every semester. So hopefully we're sidestepping some of that and making it easier for our team, our partners, and our students. And then again, participants may not need the material when it's offered. They're taking it because they're like, well, it's the only time this semester you're offering it. I know I'll need it eventually. So we want to address that And we understand workshops are great, but we want to make sure we're mindful of that as well. This also goes for your in-person workshops. Even if you don't go online, if you're watching this going, oh gosh, Virginia, I don't think we could do that. We don't have Canvas, or we can't access Canvas on our campus. Think about that also in terms of your in-person workshops. They need to be engaging. They need to have work. They need to have some sort of feedback structure to them. And be mindful that when you have availability to offer the workshop might not be when your students can come. So that is whether it's online or in person. And finally, because we're using these workshops, we are able to provide a space for our students to share ideas, provide that meaningful engagement and the feedback from our team and from each other. We are able, with this online, to kind of sidestep some of those logistical nightmares, not entirely, but for the most part, and offer just a continual resource 365, 24/7 that our students can use, come back to time and time again as they need, refer to their friends, and there's no gatekeeping in terms of it's only on the calendar once a semester. So that's a basic overview of what we're doing. I welcome questions. You can email us here at studentactivities@austin.utexas.edu. You could reach out to me directly if you'd like. But before I get to that final bit, I do just want to have a couple of thank yous. The Canvas team here at UT Austin has been awesome. Karen and Mario got us all set up. Cheryl LaGrache, she's my supervisor. She's the director of student activities. She was fully on board when I pitched these proposals to move these online and the structure I did. And of course, to all of our student testers, we've had numerous students in our office as well as student leaders come and test these online workshops for us to make sure we didn't have something as simple as a typo or as, glaring as an assignment that we'll not submit. So anyway, thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you for watching this presentation. To see other presentations, workshops, and discussions, feel free to utilize our YouTube channel or official website.